Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Shanka Show, stories about life in the Soviet Union. My name is Sergey Sputnikov, aka John Wayne Cheeseburger, and back in 1971 I was born in the USSR. In today's video we're returning back to the book Black on Red, My 44 Years Inside of the Soviet Union by Robert Robinson, and this is episode number 28. We're almost done with this book. And just a friendly reminder, if you're new to my channel, I have a separate playlist on this book and I will provide the link below in the comment section. And we're in chapter 31, A Passport at Last. In 1966, I turned 60 years old and I was still in Russia. So I just want to remind you, Robert Robinson came to the Soviet Union in 1930, and there was the original plan just to be there for 1 year and then go back to the United States. Now it's 1966, 36 years later, and he's still in Soviet Union, although he calls it Russia. As I thought about it, I could scarcely believe that I was still here. I did not feel old, and I was always looking ahead rather than back at my life as many elderly people do. In fact, I petitioned my factory successfully to keep working even though I had reached retirement age and I'll receive a pension and no longer had to work to support myself. Okay, so let's talk about pension in the Soviet Union. I touched the topic before here and there, but I think this is a good spot right now to discuss looking at Robert Robinson. So let's read again what he said. I turned 60 years old and I reached my retirement age. So in the Soviet Union, retirement age was 60 years for male and 55 years old for female. And pensions were calculated based on the person's salary, but there was a catch. In order to get your maximum pension, women should have 20 years of work. So you retired at 55, but you should work at least 20 of those years. And for men, 25 years. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, Comrade Robertson mentioned something really interesting, that he had petitioned his factory successfully to keep working. So there was a good possibility that would factory say, no, you need to retire. So that was not up to retiree or worker to choose between, I want to continue working or I want to retire. It was up to factory management to decide, yeah, we want to keep you, or no, you need to retire. So in some cases, it could be a pretty ugly situation. For example, you need another year or two to get your full, they call it рабочий стаж, so like amount of work years. But management says, no, you need to retire right now, and now your pension is not big enough. Fun fact, in Soviet Union, you had to make a hard choice, because if you retire, you're not allowed to work anymore. And that conditions existed till like mid-1970s. So for example, it was illegal to draw pension while also working somewhere. I believe in the United States it doesn't matter. You can be retired and get your Social Security while you still work. In Soviet Union, it was literally illegal. You could get in trouble, and the factory management could get in trouble if they hired retiree, because or you get in salary or you get in a pension. You cannot do double dipping. So let's see why Comrade Robertson wanted to continue working. He said that facing new designing challenges at work was what made my life bearable. I was not the sort of person who could spend my day in the park playing chess or feeding the pigeons. Then he continues, the last thing I wanted was to have time to reflect on the greatest frustration of my life, my inability to leave the Soviet Union. But let's go back to the topic of pigeons and chess. So you see, he kind of spilled a little beans about what average Soviet retiree could do. Really nothing. They could go to park, hang out with other retirees and play chess, or they can feed pigeons. There's no idea like, hey, I could go on a road trip and, explore Soviet Union, visit Baikal, Lake Baikal, visit mountains. It was not even like possible for retirees. Sure, they had enough money to buy food. Housing was very cheap, but still, this is kind of like interesting part of the Soviet Union. Everyone was poor, but we were comfortably poor. So no one will kick you out of your house or your apartment. You still have enough money to buy basic groceries, but there was no extra money to do anything like consider fun. So once you retired, you were pretty much stuck at your place, the town that you live or city or the village. We never had people like, oh, they retired and moved down south to Crimea Peninsula because, of the warmer climate, or into my Krasnodar region. No one could do it. It was not even conversation of the possibilities. Maybe for medical reasons, if you have a lungs that you can't handle Siberia anymore, maybe through the medical Spravka document, you can get going and move south. And like snowbirding, like what a lot of retirees do here in America, that was just completely unheard of. I was totally shocked when I discovered that in America, a lot of retirees, that's all they do. They like have two homes, one in Michigan, one in Florida, and they just basically bounce back and forth, summer in Michigan, then winter in Florida. Soviet style snowbirding will be spending summer in your dacha out of city, digging in the garden, growing potatoes and carrots and onions. And then in the winter, you move back into the city because usually people, their summer homes didn't have insulation, didn't have a stove to stay warm. So that would be Soviet style snowbirds. Dacha on the outskirts of the city and back to your apartment for the winter. So for people who lived and work in the cities, their minimal pension will be 34 rubles a month. So that's enough to buy about 10 bottles of vodka. And max salary was capped at 132 rubles. Now 132 rubles a month, that'll be amazing. That's pretty much was my mom's normal salary. And of course, some Soviet comrades were more equal than others. So we had so-called персональные пенсии, personal pensions. Usually those were for like party apparatchiks, factory managers and such. So upper echelon, and you could get 140 rubles a month or 160, or the biggest one was 250 rubles per month. This is pretty much what my family together were earning, around that amount. By the way, when Nikita Khrushchev was forced into retirement, he received a very special pension of 500 rubles per month. But fortunately for him, he didn't hit the Soviet gold mine and wasn't sent to Gulag labor camp. Another group of highly paid retirees were former military officers, so their pensions were starting from 250 rubles per month. And of course, if you were a general or marshal, then there was even more. And on the other end of the spectrum for retirement were kolkhozniki, collective farm workers, just like my grandparents Maria and Sergey. So when collective farms were introduced in the Soviet Union in the early 1930s, the idea was that collective farm will pay the retired workers' pensions. But of course, when a state is a monopoly buying your grain, your crops at lowest prices possible to provide cheap food for the workers in the cities, collective farms never had money, not even to pay pensions. They even didn't have cash to pay workers. So only in 1964, during Nikita Khrushchev rule, retired collective farm workers could get a state pension of 12 rubles per month. Now, just to give you a comparison, for 12 rubles, you could purchase 4 kilograms of doktorskaya kolbasa, so that's like a Soviet-style bologna. So picture your pension is enough to buy 8.8 pounds of bologna, and I looked up at Meyer prices. They sell like green bologna for $7.29 a pound. So your pension is pretty much, if you calculate in bologna, it's $64 a month. That's it. So the only way Soviet retired collective farm workers could survive is pretty much homesteading. Those 12 rubles, you couldn't buy much. You still need to buy sugar, salt. So you just lived off your land, the small plot of land that collective farm allow you to have next to your house. So they will grow potatoes, some wheat, beets, onions, and of course they'll have a pig or two. They have chickens, have a cow. So everything was coming from their homestead. That was the only way to have enough money to survive and have food to survive, and actually even help your kids that move to the city. And of course, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, situation didn't improve much, and in many cases got way worse. The change is this, in my opinion. It used to be comfortable to be poor. Now it became uncomfortable to be poor because they could take away your apartment if you don't pay your bills. Before that was unheard of, and housing was way cheaper. But when I did the calculations comparing my grandmother pension versus my mother pension, my mom's pension could buy way more food, way more goods like clothing, shoes, but because housing costs skyrocketed so much, the only way she could do better comparing the Soviet days is move again back to the village, and that's what she did. But for example, my father, he was born in 1946, baby boomer. He was counting on a really decent pension because he worked as a spray painter all his life. So because of it was a bad for your health type of work, he would expect to have an extra bonus for his pension. So he was counting, I believe, maybe 130 or 150 rubles per month pension, and that'll be more than enough to live in the city. But now his pension is just basically 90% of it goes towards the housing cost, because our apartment is actually pretty large. It has 3 rooms. Okay, and before I finish today's video, I want to read another page. This is kind of jumping to the page 366. So here Robert Robinson is talking to ambassador from Uganda, Matthias Lubega, and he's trying to, once again, he's not losing hope to leave the Soviet Union. And he said that ambassador was simply trying to inject hope in what he knew to be the dull, spiritless, mundane life of a Soviet citizen. So that's kind of gives an answer. And I asked in my video about heavy drinking in the Soviet Union, why did people drink so hard if they lived in a socialist paradise? And here Robert Robinson gives the answer: because life was dull, spiritless, and mundane. Okay, my friends, it's all I have for you today. Thank you for sticking around till the end of this video. And if you made it that far, please don't forget to like, maybe post a comment, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.